Swayam Rupa Kadhamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yata Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaidvacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namah Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Kauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavahi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I joined the Krishna consciousness movement in London in 1971 it was. So what happened was I was living in London and I happened to purchase one Krishna book. It wasn't a bookshop, it was some other kind of shop. But anyway, they were selling books and they had this Krishna book which had all the beautiful pictures in. So I was very attracted to the book and I purchased it. And when I took it home, I showed it to my friend and he had a book by the same author. So of course this was Srila Prabhupada and we were very surprised, that wow, this man, he's written this book, Krishna. My friend had another book, it was a small book he had. He had it was called the Topmost Yoga System. And it was amazing how he had that book. I still wonder how he got that book because that was the book which really convinced me, the Krishna book was beautiful and I was appreciating it, but I didn't get too much into the philosophy. It was all so new to me. But when I read the Topmost Yoga System, this was really wonderful. And every word, everything was so clear and so meaningful to me. And I was really impressed with it. And both of us ended up going to the temple and we both became devotees. So this was actually due to Prabhupada's books. And when I started going to the temple, there was only a few devotees there in those days. It was, very, very early days, and they'd opened the temple, they were renting the place. Nowadays they've recently acquired that same property again. It's on a street called Bury Place, which is just near to the British Museum. And we were renting that place, and Shamsundar Prabhu had done an incredible job converting the ground floor into a mystical temple. And of course, Prabhupada had also acquired the Radha Landaneshwara deities from some Hindu people living there in London, which was really amazing. It was really a miracle how the deities had appeared there in London. And Srila Prabhupada wanted very much, when they opened the temple in London, he wanted very much to have deities. And somehow Krishna arranged that Prabhupada could go there with the devotees, meet these Hindu people, and take the deities from them, you know, without giving any money or anything. So it was really an amazing event. That was the opening of the Buried Place Temple. Jai, His Holiness Bhakti Purushottam Swami Maharaj Ki. Welcome, Maharaj. So it was wonderful that Srila Prabhupada was able to have the presence of Radha Krishna, big marble deities there in London in those days. Because the movement, of course, it was very early. In London, at that time, there were 2 Brahmins in the temple, and Srila Prabhupada had acquired these deities. Well, actually there were more Brahmins, but what happened was Prabhupada, after he opened the temple and established the temple and the deity worship, then he got the senior devotees like Shyam Sundar Prabhu and his wife Malati and Guru Das and Yamuna Mataji, and he took them to India. He said, now we're going to begin the World Sankirtan Party, we're all going to go to India. And he left Mukunda Prabhu there to take care of the London temple. So there were only about, the number of devotees, it was about 18 maybe. There were 2 ladies and the rest were all young men. I remember when I started coming, there was one Indian man. I was thinking, oh, this is, even the Indians are joining this. So that was Subhag. He had actually come. He was not yet initiated. He could have been initiated, but he wanted to wait for Srila Prabhupada to come to personally give him initiation. So he was serving there. His Holiness Bhakti Mukunda Swami Maharaj Ki. Welcome, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. So Subhag was there, he not yet initiated, and you know, we were just a few devotees, and the temple was maintained by book distribution. And we didn't have many books. The only things we had a few copies of Back to Godhead magazine, which had been printed in Japan in those days. And it was a black and white magazine with a color page on the cover. And the articles were written for new people. Nowadays, you know, they have a very different approach to Back to Godhead. Nowadays, they present the Back to Godhead more for the congregation devotees. But the Back to Godhead magazine in those days, it was all articles written specially for new people just coming to Krishna consciousness. And the articles were written by different devotees. And we would try to distribute these magazines. Now when I joined the movement, I remember they told me, if people don't have any money, it's all right, you can give them the book. It's all right, they don't have to pay. And so I thought, oh, this is really nice, you know, you don't have to sell anything, you know. So we were doing like that for a little while, and then a short time later, Prabhupada sent a letter and said, everyone who wants the book, every gentleman, they have to pay. And I said, any gentleman, he will give you at least a quarter or something. I think that was US currency. Anyway, Prabhupada made the point, he said, if we don't collect any money for the books, he said, there'll be no money in the BBT, and we won't be able to keep printing books. So when the temples take the books from the BBT, we have to pay to the BBT for these books, so that the BBT can continue to print books. So we had to try to distribute these magazines, and we had a few boxes of Krishna book, volume 1. The Krishna book had come out. I told you I had purchased the volume 1, so I purchased that. So I remember I was coming to the temple, visiting to Aarti, and there was this lady there, and she was not very old, young woman, French lady. She's still a devotee, she's still around. Her name is Mundakini Devi Dasi. She was a very lively devotee, very nice. And she was doing all the puja. She was taking care of Radha Landaneshwara and also Jagannath Baladev and Subhadra. And she was always saying, Prabhupada is coming. Prabhupada is coming very soon. Prabhupada is coming. She would always say to me like that, I would come to the temple and she'd say, Prabhupada is coming very soon, he's coming very soon. So I was like, Prabhupada, how did I lose Prabhupada? I wasn't so familiar with anything. Anyway, she was always telling me like that, Prabhupada's coming, and it went on like that for a long time, but I said, where's Prabhupada? Where? And she'd point to the picture, Prabhupada's big picture was there in the temple room, and she'd say, he's coming soon. Anyway, Prabhupada didn't come for quite some time. The devotees were always anxious that Prabhupada's coming. We don't know when, but sometime he's coming. So we were going on in this way. And then finally we got news that Prabhupada is definitely coming this time, and the flight was given the information, and so we had to prepare for Prabhupada, Just like you can see a lot of preparation going on here, that was a very common thing whenever Prabhupada would come. Before Prabhupada would come, the temple would be completely in chaos, and everything would be, so many things going on, and painting and decorating, last minute touches everywhere, trying to make the temple look really nice for Srila Prabhupada. So, it was just like that, that Prabhupada came in. I remember we all went to Heathrow Airport, and it was late in the night. Prabhupada came in somewhere in the middle of the night, and we'd all gone out there to the airport to receive him. And we were waiting there, and then we were waiting, and finally Prabhupada came out, and of course it wasn't a disappointment. It was very nice, it was very ecstatic. Prabhupada came out, we all fell on the floor, everyone hit the ground offering obeisances to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada comes out and he's smiling at everyone. And he knew it was the middle of the night, so he said, okay, let's go to temple. And we had arranged somebody to bring Prabhupada back to the temple, and take him to the temple, and Prabhupada got back to the temple. And when we got back, Prabhupada opened his room to all of us. He had us all come in his room and was talking. He was happy to see all of us there. We were all young brahmacharis, we shaved our heads, everybody shaved their head for Prabhupada coming, looking nice, bright, shining faces. And Prabhupada was happy just to be there in London and see the deities and see the devotees. So Prabhupada, when he would come to London, as he did in every other place, he liked to go for a walk in the morning. Every morning he liked to walk. Doctor had actually told him, Swamiji, you need to walk. So Prabhupada, he took the instructions of the doctor seriously. He made a point every morning he'd go out for a walk. And he would walk quite briskly, quite fast-paced, devotees would be rushing to keep up. Not everyone got to go on a walk with him. Sometimes, a few people, sometimes more. Sometimes Prabhupada would go in a car and Shamsundar would drive Prabhupada to a park somewhere, and Prabhupada would walk around the park and talk. Sometimes he'd say something to devotees, sometimes comment, sometimes he would just chant Hare Krishna. But he liked to be with the devotees. He liked to interact with the devotees. I remember what happened. One devotee he'd come from the USA. He was a very senior devotee. He'd come to help us to improve our Sankirtan. We were not doing very well on Sankirtan. They were doing very good in the USA. And they said, we'll send some people over there to train you up how to do better on Sankirtan, you see. Because the temple was just supported by Sankirtan. Just whatever we could do out there on the streets, distributing Back to Godhead magazine. And of course we're dressed in our dhotis, and we're chanting and dancing. So we were working like that. So the devotee came from America and he came to London and he saw the temple, he saw the place where we were living, this number 7 Bury place. And he looked at the place and he saw, the basement was the prasadam room and there was a kitchen there in the basement also. And the ground floor was the temple room. Then the first floor was Prabhupada's room and there was a toilet there for Prabhupada also. And then the next floor was like the women's ashram, and then the next floor above that was the men's ashram. So in this way we were living in this building. It was not a very big building, but we were happy. We were renting it. We were struggling to pay the rent. We were always in trouble trying to pay the rent. But anyway, the devotee came from America and he saw the place and he said, oh, this place is not good enough for Prabhupada. He said, we should have a better, when Prabhupada comes here, we don't want Prabhupada to stay in this little room. He said, I'll write to Prabhupada. He said, I'll write to Prabhupada and tell him. I'll tell him when he comes next time, we're going to rent a suite in a big hotel for him. So the devotee wrote his letter to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada wrote back and he said to the devotee, he said, I don't want to stay in hotel. He said, I like that room. So it was very pleasing to the devotees. We felt very enlivened to hear how much Prabhupada liked to be with the devotees, that he wanted to keep staying with us. He didn't want to go and live in any hotel. So that was very nice. I always remember that instruction. So Srila Prabhupada liked to be in the temple, as a householder, of course, as a younger man, as a householder, he didn't have the opportunity to live in the temple. He'd been living with his family, he'd been living at home, at his children and so on. But now that he's a sannyasi, he was happy to actually stay in the temple. Even though we didn't have much of a temple, much of a building, but still Prabhupada was happy to be with the devotees and to be there. And Prabhupada always had regulated lifestyle, He wouldn't come to Mangal Aarti, but he would be up. He would wake up very early, usually like about midnight or something. He'd sleep for a couple of hours, and then he'd wake up about midnight, and he'd begin his writing and dictation. And then he wouldn't come to Mangal Aarti, but after the Mangal Aarti and so on, then when it came time for japa, that time, about just becoming daylight, then Prabhupada liked to go for a morning walk. And some devotees would be able to accompany Prabhupada on the morning walk. He'd go out for his walk. This was a regular program for Srila Prabhupada. Every day he liked to do this. Even if it was raining, he would go out, like to walk, and then come back. And then he would come back, he would always come back in time for the deity greeting. Wherever he was, I saw him in London, I saw Prabhupada in the USA, I saw Prabhupada in India, but everywhere he was always on time for everything. There was never a question, oh, we have to wait for Prabhupada to come. And Prabhupada knew the time and he was always aware, and he would always come exactly in time for everything, for the deity greetings, to greet the deities. Prabhupada would be there, and he would bow down, offer full obeisances to the deities. He liked to see the deities, and he was very concerned to see the deities were nicely decorated. I remember one time in New York, he liked so much the decoration which we had done on the altar there in New York. Actually, what had happened, there was this one artist, one very, very good artist. He was from Germany, a devotee named Vasudev. So he had come there to America and he built this incredible backdrop for the whole altar there in the Brooklyn temple. Made a very, very nice, attractive backdrop. And we had Radha Govinda there in the front, and like that. It was a very nice altar. And Prabhupada came and he saw the altar. He said, oh, very beautiful. And he asked the devotees immediately, please get me a picture of this. And so the devotees, they arranged to get a photograph and presented Prabhupada a picture. And Prabhupada, when he would travel the world, then he could show to other people. Like when he would come to India, he would say, you can see here, this is how my students are worshipping the deities in New York. Prabhupada liked to show these things, you see, what the devotees are doing, show the pictures to people, how devotees are worshipping the deities. Another time in Calcutta, Prabhupada also appreciated how nicely the deities were dressed. Actually, at that time, it was Mother Narayani Mataji. She's still active, a very active preacher. She does a lot more preaching now. In those days, she was the pujari in Calcutta temple. And she was staying there with her husband, and she was worshipping Radha Govinda, and she dressed the deities, both of them. Her husband, he would dress the Jagannath deities, she would dress Radha Govinda. So Prabhupada came and saw the deities and he said, oh, very beautiful. Who has dressed? So nice. Thank you so much. So Prabhupada liked to show his appreciation to the devotees who had done something nice, to dress the deities, to show the beauty of the deities to people. At the same time, if things were not nice, then Prabhupada would also let you know. And sometimes it would happen that the devotees didn't have fresh flowers. So Prabhupada would condemn. He would say to them, this is not good. What is this? Why these flowers like this? They're not fresh. He was very concerned to see that we would worship the deities very nicely. I was telling also how it happened in Calcutta, because every afternoon we have the fruit offering for the deities, just like here also in the afternoon they offer fruits. So in Calcutta temple, Albert Road, in those days, we would offer a whole fruit plate to the deities. So Srila Prabhupada asked the devotee servant one day, bring me some of the maha fruits, I want to have some maha fruit. So they brought the maha plate to Srila Prabhupada with all the fruits. And Prabhupada was taking some of the fruits, and then he said to the servant, he said, who has purchased this fruit? And the servant went and inquired from the devotees, And then he found out, he said, yeah, he said, the fruit was purchased by Debu Prabhu. Debu was a congregational member. He was not living in the temple. He was coming regularly and he was doing service. He was a Bengali, and so he was coming regularly, and the temple president had requested him to purchase the fruit because, you know, he was Bengali, so we thought he will get a good price, you know. The foreigners go to the market, we'll get cheeky. But the Bengali people, he speaks the language, he'll get a good deal on the fruit. So, but they told Prabhupada, Debu has purchased the fruit, Prabhupada. So Prabhupada said, tell Debu to come here. So Debu went in, offered his obeisances to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada looked at him and said, you're Bengali, you don't know how to purchase fruit? Yeah, Prabhupada said, this fruit you purchased, this is not satisfactory, it's not, some of it's rotten and it's not, some of it's hard, it's not good. You're Bengali, you should know what to purchase. So like that, Prabhupada is very particular. And you can read also in Chaitanya Charitamrita is described like this, you know, in relation to Raghava Pandit. Raghava Pandit lived in Panihati with his sister Damayanti, and he was very particular about what he offered to the deities. And Lord Chaitanya praised this Raghava Pandit, how he was so particular. The Chaitanya Charitamrita describes how on one occasion he was bringing coconuts. Raghava Pandit, he had the habit, he liked to offer coconuts. We all know when you go to Mayapur, Bengal, a lot of coconuts are there, you know, and coconuts were offered every day to his deities there in Panihati. And he would shave the coconuts, and he would bring the sweetest coconuts. He would search out the best coconuts. He would go far even to bring the best coconuts to offer to the deities. So it happened on one occasion, the servant was carrying the plate with the coconuts, and he happened to put his hand up and touched the ceiling. And when he did that, immediately Raghava Pandit stopped and said, now the coconuts are contaminated. He said they cannot be offered to Krishna because you've touched the ceiling. And so much dust flies up to the ceiling, and you've touched the ceiling, so some of the dust must have fallen on the coconuts, and I can't offer them to the deities anymore, because if it's fallen, the coconuts are all contaminated now. I have to get more coconuts, make the offering again. So Lord Chaitanya praised this attitude of Raghava Pandit, how he was so meticulous, he was so careful of what he offered to the deities. He wanted everything should be the best quality, and it had to be very clean, very pure. So Prabhupada also, he was pointing out to us how we have to worship the deities very nicely. It's appropriate on this occasion, you know, we're going to install deities here. So it's very important also, the devotees to also to bear in mind these things, how we should worship the deities, and the standards of the deity worship, very, very important for us. And Lord Chaitanya was very much concerned about these kind of things. And he praised Raghava Pandit, not only for his standards of cleanliness, but also he was a very expert cook, and he would cook wonderful dishes along with his sister Damayanti. They would cook very nice preparations and offer them to the deities. And they had a thing called Raghava Jili. Raghava Jili means sacks, bags of prasadam which Raghava Pandit had prepared along with Damayanti. They would prepare special foods, spices and different things, namkins and different sweets, and they would arrange that these things would be preserved until they got to Jagannath Puri to give to Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya would relish these offerings. Brought all the way from Panihati, cooked a long time ago, but still very fresh and very tasty. So this was Raghava Pandit, Damayanti, their deity worship, very exemplary, very high standard. And Prabhupada writes, he said, you may think he's a fanatic. He said, but this is how we should worship the deity, you see. We have to be very particular that the Lord has come personally, and we're so fortunate we have the opportunity to offer service to Him. So I remember these incidents happening. Prabhupada liked very much to see the deities well decorated, especially when there's a festival going on. It should be very nice, very gorgeous. And when we had Rath Yatra also, Prabhupada liked to see a lot of decoration, nice prasadam. I remember one night we had a program in a hall in London. Prabhupada would come and we'd book some of the, in London there's different towns, like here in KL you've got different parts of the town. So each part of London they have a town hall. So we would book different town halls, and they're quite nice, big places, So we would book these halls, and Prabhupada would come and give lectures there. The public would come and attend. And Prabhupada was very particular. Bring me some prasadam. I want to see what you're offering to the people. And Prabhupada would taste it and see and tell us what he thought. Usually what would happen, we had some of the local Indian ladies, they would prepare some special food and that would be distributed at the program. So it would be very nice and Prabhupada would appreciate. Again, also in New York, Sunday programs, Prabhupada wanted to see prasadam. What prasadam are you serving for all these guests? And he would praise it or compliment, say what was not good. He was very concerned. Everything should be cooked very nicely, especially puris. Sometimes the puris would not be cooked properly, and Prabhupada would get quite upset that, you cannot cook puri, you don't know how to cook properly. Sometimes Prabhupada would have these pastimes with his servants. I remember the one servant, he couldn't cook chapati nicely, he was having difficulty because they were moving, traveling in different places, and so some places you don't have so much nice facility to make chapati. And the servant said, Prabhupada, what can I do? I don't have the facility, I can't do it properly. And Prabhupada said, I will do it. And Prabhupada would get up, he would go in the kitchen and do it. And he'd cook the chapati would blow up, and then he'd throw it in the face of the devotee. Joking, joking. See? You see? I did. So Prabhupada could do these things. He could cook in all different conditions. He could prepare nicely chapatis. So he was very concerned about this. He'd like to see, what are we having for breakfast? Sometimes he would ask, what are the devotees having for breakfast? We'd check to see. He was always concerned to see that we're doing things right. He was always training us and teaching us how to do things nicely. He would want to see that when we did kirtan, that the kirtan was done nicely. One time I was in Vrindavan in the Krishna Balaram Mandir. So it was 1976 or 77, like that. And I was in the temple room and it came to midday arti. In 1970s there were not a lot of people coming in Vrindavan at that time. It wasn't so crowded, the temple was quite quiet there. So I was in the temple room and it was midday and they opened the curtain, so I picked up the kartals and I started to lead the kirtan. But after a few minutes, Prabhupada's servant, actually was a sannyasi, he was Prabhupada's secretary, and he came out and he said, Prabhupada wants to know, why is nobody playing Madanga? I was only playing kartals, you know, there was only a few people in the temple room, so I just picked up the kartal and started playing the kartal. And Prabhupada, he's not in the temple room, he's in his own room behind the temple, but he was listening, he could hear, and could not hear the Madanga. So he sent his servant, why is nobody playing Madanga? When you have kirtan, there must be always kartals and Madanga. So it's amazing how particular Prabhupada was about everything. You know, how the details were very important to Srila Prabhupada. He really cared. So, I don't know, did you guys want to, would you like to?
Hare Krishna. So just a very quick announcement, Maharaj. So dear devotees, His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj will be arriving soon. So we kindly request the devotees to please vacate this walk path. And our humble request, dear devotees, please do not move from your chairs. You may stand up, but please do not move around. Dear devotees, those at the back, when His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Maharaj is coming, please do not move from your location. Please you can actually stand at your respective location and pay obeisances, but please do not, no paying obeisances, just stand and do not move.
Hare Krishna, இப்பொழுது ஸ்ரீல ஜெயபதாக சுவாமி குரு மகாராஜ் அவர்கள் வருகை புரிகிறார். தயவு செய்து யாரும் பாதையில் நிற்க வேண்டாம். இந்த பாதையில் அவருடைய சக்கர நாற்காலி வர இருக்கின்றது. அதன் பிறகு யாரும் உங்கள் இடத்தை விட்டு நகராதீர்கள். எல்லோரும் நீங்கள் அமர்ந்த நிலையிலோ அல்லது நின்ற நிலையிலோ அவரை மீண்டும் கூறுகிறோம், யாரும் உங்களுடைய இடத்தை விட்டு நகராதீர்கள். குரு மகாராஜ் இங்கே வருவார், நமக்கு நன்றாக தரிசனம் கொடுக்க போகின்றார். எனவே யாரும் உங்கள் இடத்தை விட்டு நகராதீர்கள். இருந்த இடத்திலிருந்து அவரை தரிசனம் செய்யலாம்.
Hare Krishna. This is a very important announcement. His Holiness Jayapataka Swami Guru Maharaj would want, when he arrives, he want to first address the China devotees. So we request the China devotees to come to the front, and others, please, very humbly we request you, if you could please kindly move back. And then Maharaj will continue his lecture after this arrangement is done. Chinese devotees translation. Chinese devotees translation. Somebody can translate, please.
They know, they can see, they're already up.
Okay. Okay. Other devotees, please kindly move back so that Chinese devotees can come in front. Once Guru Maharaj has addressed the Chinese devotees, he will then speak to all of you all. Thank you very much for your kind cooperation. We appreciate your cooperation very much. Okay, quickly, please sit down because Maharaj would like to continue with the Prabhupada katha. Okay, please sit down, please sit down. Thank you. Okay, Hare Krishna. Maharaj, please.
Hare Krishna. Alright, so I was speaking a bit about Prabhupada and how he wanted the deities worshipped very nicely. I remembered a couple of incidents which took place when I was there in Bury Place in London. What happened was the Parampara pictures, you know, Bhaktisiddhanta and Gorkishore Das Babaji, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Jagannath Das Babaji. We put them in the wrong order somehow, you know, rushing to get the altar open, get the door open. Jai, His Grace Bhagavad Amrita Prabhu Ki! And nice to have another Prabhupada disciple here.
Maharaj, I'm sorry to interrupt. I try to hide.
Bhagavad Amrita Prabhu was a personal servant of Srila Prabhupada. So I'm speaking about Prabhupada, how he wanted deities worshipped and how particular he was. So what happened was when he opened the curtain, Prabhupada saw the disciplic succession hadn't been put in the right order. So Prabhupada immediately noticed it and said, look at this, why like this? Am I the only one to notice these things? Like this, he was correcting us. And another time, we had, you know, Radha Landaneshwara was on the lower level and Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra were on top. So it happened, you know, to get the curtain ready, to get the deities ready to open the curtain, they put flowers around Radha Landaneshwara, but there were no flowers up on beside Jagannath. And Prabhupada, when he saw this, he said, why so many flowers here and nothing up there? Jagannath is there, why haven't you decorated up there? So like this, Prabhupada, he was so particular, he would notice these things and very concerned that we do it properly. One time in Los Angeles it happened that Prabhupada was taking, you know, after seeing the deities, he would always come and take Charanamrita. So when he went to take the Charanamrita one time, it had salt in it instead of sugar. So Prabhupada said, who has done this? And there was some young girl who had done it. So Prabhupada said to the devotee, he said, get someone responsible to do these things. You see? So he didn't like it, you know, just anybody and just new people coming and trying to serve the deities. Everything should be done very carefully. People have to be properly trained and they have to do everything nicely. So of course nowadays we do try to do things better and we try to have higher standards. Definitely things like the deity ministry is there and the deity worship course, and we have also for second initiation higher standards for people who want to be the brahmanas, that they have to be properly qualified. So Prabhupada liked these things, he liked to see us try to improve the standards, and he encouraged the devotees to learn the philosophy. When Prabhupada came to the temple one time, it was in Atlanta, the devotees were worshipping Gaur Nitai there, and one of the devotees began to sing the Vaishnava song, Parama Karuna Pahudvijana Nitai Gora Chandra. So devotees were singing the song, and then Prabhupada asked them afterwards, do you know the meaning? He didn't want them to just sing the song and not know the meaning. He was very concerned, you know, that we should know what we're singing. And so he would check like that. I remember another time, it was in Dallas. I was in Dallas, and at that time they had the Gokula there. They had many young boys stuck there in the Gokula. So Prabhupada can come there, and Prabhupada gave class, and when he began, he said, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Then he turned to all the boys and he asked them, what is the meaning? Do you know the meaning? So the young boys, they were all a bit frightened, you know. There's Prabhupada, you know. The boys were all a bit afraid to speak. But like that, Prabhupada wanted to see. He wanted to see devotees that they're learning everything nicely. Like he said, if you don't know the meaning, if you sing some song but you don't know the meaning, then you don't get any benefit. So you have to know the meaning of everything. So Prabhupada was checking on us like this. He was trying to train us. I remember we would go in London on morning walks. Prabhupada would often ask, he'd say, what is that sloka? Who knows this sloka? Nowadays, you know, people, when we teach Bhakti Shastri, people complain, oh, I have to learn slokas, oh, why I have to learn sloka? But Prabhupada liked us to be able to quote these slokas, and he expected us to know these things from the scriptures. So he would ask us, what is this sloka? And devotees would try to answer, try to say. Like this, he was always training us, guiding on how to do things nicely. When we were cooking for Prabhupada one time in London, you know, the kitchen was in the basement and Prabhupada was 2 floors up. But we would cook everything and we'd rush upstairs carrying the puri, so it's still very hot when Prabhupada would get it. Cook, and you know, we cook and just take it, run up the stairs and rush into Prabhupada's room to deliver it to Prabhupada. Try to give Prabhupada nice, tasty prasadam. And this way Prabhupada was appreciating the service mood of the devotees. We tried to serve Prabhupada as best we could. Srila Prabhupada liked all of the devotees to be happy in Krishna consciousness. What happened one time in London, there was some dispute about who should be the temple president. So Prabhupada, he didn't like these kind of things, you know. He didn't like to see the devotees get into politics and arguing with each other. Another time it happened, Prabhupada, one devotee, a very senior devotee, had some spiritual difficulty and he'd gone out of Krishna consciousness. But then after some time he came back. And when he came back, then Srila Prabhupada asked him to go to Australia. And he asked him to go to Australia and take a managerial position there. But when he got there to Australia, the devotees were not so happy. They didn't like it. And they kind of rejected him. But Prabhupada was upset. He said, I sent him there. He said, why they cannot accept him? So Prabhupada, he liked to see the devotees working together, helping each other. And even if someone had difficulties and went away from Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada liked to keep them alive and give them a chance to come back, even though they had some difficulties. So Bhagavat Amrita Prabhu is here. I'm sure he would like to say something. He's a very wonderful devotee. And he also had a lot of intimate association with Srila Prabhupada, especially in Mayapur. So, can you give Prabhupada the mic?
Hare Krishna. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravan Pachami Nivise Sasuna Vaskata